Welcome back, and glad you are watching Morning Express here on KTN. And my name is Joy Doreen Bira. This time we have the business chat every Tuesday, and in studio to discuss matters energy and electricity is Joe Nganga, Engineer Joe Nganga, who is the Director General for the Energy Regulatory Commission. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure being around.
It's an honor to have you in studio.
Thank you.
It's not very often that people bring their energy into the studio at this time.
Okay.
But well, so Kenyans have been experiencing the upward trend when it comes to paying for electricity. And I think the month of August has seen the highest rates ever since November last year. And that was adjusted by the Energy Regulatory Commission. Why so? You know, knowing that these prices are high and then you're putting Kenya Power in the spotlight but still going ahead to increase the rates. What's going on?
Two factors come into play. The first one is with respect to the strengthening of the US dollar against major world currencies.
Yes.
And of course, the Kenya shilling is affected. So in that respect, we've had to adjust the foreign exchange rate fluctuation from 49 cents in the previous month per unit to 1 shilling and 45 cents per unit, an increase of about 60 cents. In addition, we have had to adjust the fuel cost adjustment from 2 shillings and 51 cents per unit, which was prevailing the previous month, to now 3 shillings and 11 cents.
Yeah.
Now, the key issue that came into play with respect to the fuel cost charge is the reduction in geothermal generation and some hydro also reduction, which means we had to increase diesel generation. And if I can give the actual figures, hydro reduced by about 2%, geothermal by about 5%, and because combined those generation sources control about 80% of the energy mix, there was an increase in diesel generation of 23%. That has a significant effect on the fuel cost charge. In addition, during the month, there was a new power plant that was being commissioned in Athi River, Triumph Power, 83 megawatt power plant.
Right.
And it's a contractual requirement. It's within the agreement between the parties to be able to ensure that the plant can be tested so that it can be accepted in the system. And usually there is a 30-day reliability testing to ensure that the plant can perform as expected. And that also increased the diesel component in the power mix. So overall, we ended up having to adjust the fuel cost charge, which will have an impact on the retail tariffs. May I point out, we were not blaming Kenya Power. Indeed, when you look at the issues at hand, Kenya Power comes into play because they are the off-taker. And that's what the consumer will see. But the underlying issues have to do with power plants that were unavailable. And we, of course, followed up the issue. And this has resulted because of all-carrier plants being out. Specifically in all-carrier 1, additional unit was out.
Yes. And
also all-carrier 4. And in the hydros, Kamburu 2 was out. And that reduced the generation. And that would have meant that we increase the diesel to compensate, because the off-taker, which in this case is Kenya Power, must be able to utilize all the plants that are in the system rather than avoiding to supply. So it may be expensive, of course, power, but nonetheless it must be supplied. So really, when you look at the circumstances, it's really an issue of management of the system. It's not blaming any party as such.
So you're not exactly blaming Kenya Power for it?
No.
And you're not putting them under scrutiny?
We, of course, do raise those issues. Every month we do write to them with respect to these discussions, because we get information from the whole of the plants in the system, and based on that we are able to see what will be able to be passed on to consumers, for instance, the fuel cost charge. And of course, these are a routine that we normally do to probe what we can be able to do to ensure that we maintain the tariffs because of the commitments we've done previously.
All right, so what happens, because you just mentioned that some of those in Olkaria, the producers in Olkaria were down or are out, Olkaria 1, Olkaria 4. So what is the fallback plan? Are we going to see this trend going upwards even in months to come with electricity tariffs?
The agreement that we've discussed with the utilities, and we called both Kenya Power and KenGen, is to ensure that KenGen is able to enhance hydro generation to cover for any reduction in geothermal production. From about 30th of last month, that should be happening. And unless there is a major problem, we should be able to manage back the fuel cost charge to where it was. Our commitment is to have it within the range of 2 to 3 shillings. Of course, if you have additional green sources, then you should be able to minimize that. But that is the commitment we would want to make. And with respect to the overall tariff, I would like to point out that the structure is such that there is a base tariff, which we set every 3 years. And like in this case, every July we review it. And when we look at the reviews that we undertook in this year, they actually go down from the previous one. So the base tariff actually is going down in terms of the energy cost. It's only the pass-through costs. And this is the fuel cost charge, the foreign exchange, and inflation, which we do every 6 months. Yes.
All right, so the fuel cost charge, forex exchange, those are also some of the factors that do influence the rates, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about the Mwananchi, because for them, the average Kenyan, I should say, I don't even want to say the average Kenyan, the consumer of electricity in the country today, takes some time to understand some of these factors. How exactly do forex rates influence power tariffs for people who really would like to understand that?
I think the key thing is how we do pricing. Because the first thing, you must be able to ensure that the service is fully costed from generation, transmission, distribution, and supply. Then you look at the revenue requirements of the whole sector. And how we calculate that is we provide a margin for the operators and also allow for expenses like operation and maintenance, depreciation, taxes, and even technical losses in the system. With that, we can be able now to know the amount of money that is required in the system and the number of units that we have spread that. Then we cost the various categories of consumers so that there is equity, which means we try as much as possible to ensure that every category of consumers is charged according to the demand they impose on the system. So that when you look at how we price how much everybody pays, which is what we call tariff, you'll actually find that depending on your voltage levels, for instance, you will pay, for instance, less with additional voltage.
Yes.
So that the consumer at 220 will certainly pay more than a consumer who is being supplied, for instance, at 415 volts or 66 or 132, which is the highest. That ensures that we are able to relate the costing to how much you demand on the system. Now, for the domestic consumers, where you are focusing on your question, we have 3 categories. And the first thing we have tried to do is to ensure that we are able to ring-fence the vulnerable members of society.
Yes.
And therefore, there is what we call a lifeline tariff, which means anybody who consumes within the first 50 units of power, you actually are able to pay a subsidized rate. But after that, when you come out of that, if you are consuming more than that to 1,500 or beyond that, then of course we are able to recover the full cost. So the system is done such that we can also be able to ensure that the cost that everybody pays reflects as much as possible its true worth, because there will be a tendency for people to be able to misuse power, for instance, unless you're able to appreciate the actual cost of the unit. I'll give an analogy. For instance, if you're given an orange, if you cannot be able to know its true value, it's most likely that you can be able to throw it away or waste it.
Yeah.
So the key thing here is to price it such that you are able to reflect the cost of service, providing that service to consumers.
All right.
Yeah.
So the Energy Regulatory Commission is also considering having an independent power distributor. Can you tell us about that?
Not really the independent power distributor. I think this has to do with the way the market structure is. The current model is that you have various generators or producers of power, and you have one off-taker, the person who buys. This is Kenya Power. And there have been discussions in the past on whether really that should be sustained or there could be improvements. Discussions, of course, have come up and proposals have been made. One of the key issues that have come up is the issue of having an independent system operator. In other words, the dispatch, the actual dispatch of the various plants in the system is done by a different party. This is a gradual process, of course, because what we would want is to build up on what we have. And in the future, maybe it may come. But I think this is to enhance the performance of the existing model. So those discussions have been there, including also whether there will be probably independent distributing companies in addition to Kenya Power. So all these are debates that will be informing how the market will be building up, because also we are conscious of the fact that the market will be opening up through the East African region. And we've been working within the East African power pool to see how the various countries can be able to assist one another in providing the cheapest source of power to the various economies to ensure that all economies can be competitive.
All right. And before I even let you go, of course, there's certain issues that some people feel, okay, now August, this is the highest tariff that we have paid. Is this going to be coming down anytime soon, or are we still going to be influenced by the forex rates?
The forex rate is our external factor, and I think I need to stress here is the issue of the strengthening of the dollar. It's also affecting the petroleum side.
Yes.
So this will be an external factor. If it continues, then of course we'll be in trouble, but presumably it can be managed, and with that we can also be able to manage the actual costs. With respect to the operational issues, we'll be taking up with the actual generators to be able to ensure that we can be able to retain our commitment to retain the FCC within the band of 2 to 3 shillings per unit.
All right. Earlier on, you talked about the diesel generation, going up, but then hydro has dropped to by 5%. You said
2%.
2%, and geothermal
about 5%.
by 5%.
Yes.
So and we are looking at a time where maybe by 2017, at least 70% of Kenya is is having electricity, or at least is lit up, and then by 2020 or 2030, we're going to be having universal electrification, access to electricity. But do you think this is achievable?
Oh yes, it is. It is achievable.
Are we
Our
behind
determination
schedule?
is actually to ensure that we reduce the tariffs. And from the time that we introduced the new current tariffs in 2013, our commitment is to see the actual tariff going down, and we've been following that very closely to ensure that we are tracking that. Inevitably, there could be situations that come up, like the one that came up on the geothermal plants, but that doesn't mean that the actual trend will be changing. We'll be determined to ensure that we get back on track and continue that way. So I think the key thing is to ensure that the tariffs remain competitive, they are affordable, and they can be able to ensure that as a region, specifically our country, for instance, we are very competitive vis-a-vis our neighbors.
Well, the energy players like Kenya Power, and I think there was Kenya Pipeline as well, and a number of others, the electricity distributor, Kentraco as well, said that one of the challenges that they faced there was a debate that happened, I think, 3 weeks ago, and they said that one of the challenges that they face is land conflicts, where people have been compensated, but then they're not being allowed to further connect people to access to electricity. As the Energy Regulatory Commission, are you in any way working hand in hand with the National Lands Commission to ensure that at least they are not interrupted with, aside from the other challenges that they're facing, like vandalism and human resource capacity? How are you helping to, deal with some of those challenges?
I'm glad actually that you're on top of some of these challenges. And truly the issue of wave access is a major issue. And as a commission, we feel even the cost of power is being affected by this.
Yes.
For instance, there have been challenges by Kentraco to be able to complete the 400 kV line between Nairobi and Mombasa. And that is a very critical line so that we can be able to export power from Naivasha, geothermal, to the coast. If that were possible, and if that had been done, we would be able to manage the FCC even better, because we would reduce the need for thermal generation at the coast. Equally, there could be other areas where we could have other lines and they are being affected. So it's a challenge that we really must address because it's going to affect the cost of power, because the very people probably who are doing that are the ones who are complaining about the cost of power. So we must address this contradiction to be able to move forward. And I think as a country, we are proposing stringent proposals in the energy bill to be able to ensure that infrastructure, not just in power, can be able to be implemented without these impediments.
All right. Well, thank you so much. We do appreciate the time taken to come inform us about the current affairs that are taking place in the energy sector and how we are doing with our tariffs. We do appreciate that. It was an honor speaking to you, Engineer. All right. And that is Engineer Joe Nganga, who is the Director General at the Energy Regulatory Commission, just keeping us up to date on what's happening in the current Kenya that we are living in. Our tariffs have gone up, but why? He just explained that. And so there are various factors, fuel as well as forex rates. But now you're watching Morning Express. Coming up is a person of interest, and you don't want to miss this one. Dr. James Mwangi is going to be in studio speaking to Michael Gitonga, Michael G. Gitonga. Yeah, that's right. All right, do stay with us.